Greetings. Today's topic is Hurricane Tesla hits China with Faraday Future being the first victim. We go on to the fact that the impact of Tesla China is our primary focus today as we head into earnings. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Just a reminder, we actually could really use your support on Patreon, and we also appreciate your taking time to like if you like the show that we presented today. Our greetings and our responses to questions will happen after 15 minutes of the show as a way to make sure those not live will be able to enjoy the show without interruption. So today's show is kind of strange, interesting as usual from us. The issue that's come up is that we're starting to see some conflicting data points. So for example, EV sales are actually down in China, even though they did 1.5 million units last year. Sales have declined. And the biggest driver for this decline has actually been reduction by the Chinese government in subsidies to both consumers and auto companies. So I believe we're down to in the 10 or 15 range of the number of companies that are currently offering EVs in China, and the number is declining. And one recent casualty was Faraday, hence the name of the show we came up with today. So the question is sort of why did we come up with the analysis of the impact of a hurricane? Well, it turns out that one of the phenomena of a hurricane is they kind of are so powerful that they're able to create their own weather. So we're sort of picking up on that theme today when we look at Tesla, because yes, the Chinese are somewhat new to Tesla, even though 20% of all Teslas built have actually gone to China. Tesla has a number of assets that distinguish it there. Unlike its domestic competitors, they have nationwide coverage of supercharger facilities. They're operating primarily with 300 miles of range plus vehicles. So Tesla's actually entered the country for a very long time with a very high quality reputation, driven by large sales of both Model S and X. And so now the general population of China has been able to enjoy the benefits of the Model 3. And, you know, we could go through it and just have countless examples of ways in which Tesla distinguishes itself. One of the ones in China, one of the other ones that comes to mind is the fact that in the biohazard mode, there are a lot of people concerned about air pollution in China, and that completely eliminates Tesla's Model X and S biohazard mode. Allows many people to enjoy health that they don't enjoy in any other vehicle while sort of being in the country. So what I'm sort of building up to hurricane-wise is you have these winds and forces that Tesla represents, and we're sort of fascinated. We don't have the answer, but we have the question. We have a whole bunch of data points to share with you. So just a couple of quick data points to run by. So what we're really hunting for with these data points is to sort of line up the story relative to, well, why is it that people would first, they've gotten in line and lined up to purchase Model 3s. They've already been buying in very solid numbers. And as the taxes have been reduced and they still get the subsidy until next year, there are a lot of customers migrating from other options in the EV space in China to come over to Tesla. So a couple of sort of a few notable data points are one of the ways to articulate the value that's placed on Tesla by Chinese customers is the fact that over year one, Tesla is experiencing 70% retention of market value, whereas competing firms are experiencing as much as 75% loss of value in year one. So this really goes to sort of marginal utility. There's a pedigree issue with Tesla where there are consumers that have been studying and considering the vehicle for 5 to 10 to 15 years since Tesla's been on the market globally and in China. And so you have all these folks that had sort of pent up ability to sort of look at, do I want a Tesla or not? Another variable is something surprisingly we call stability. If you have a lot of other companies like Faraday, for example, even NEO, that are on shaky legs, can you buy that company's vehicle because you're not sure if they go out of business? Can you get spare parts or any other parts related to that vehicle once it's first in bankruptcy and then disappears? So again, Tesla's, despite what the U.S. press is suggesting about Tesla's demise quickly, it's a very solid company that's been around for quite a while, and merely its size and presence allows those that might have issues with them to even get third-party parts for Tesla vehicles that might not be available for others. So what we're sort of angling for here right now is the fact that there's an interesting phenomenon, which is in Silicon Valley, there's a concept called eating your young. So what this, and one of the biggest decisions that any company, including Tesla, has to think about is as you introduce new products and possibilities with new vehicles, do you run the risk of completely destroying your current sales of vehicles by new models that have been introduced? And the answer for Tesla is let's go for it, because the goal obviously is improve on pollution impact, and the way you do that is by increasing the number of vehicles, and the lower the price point, and more people that can afford it and potentially sort of enter the space as owners. So bottom line is that Tesla is a master at eating its young in terms of introducing vehicles that consumers love that are at lower price points that impact sales of the higher price points. And so we actually have a show coming up focused on some of the Bob Lutz logic as to why Tesla was attacked the way it's been by large sellers. And one of the key variables is this whole eating your young phenomenon. Do you want to introduce products that potentially destroy the sales of your existing products? And, it lurks as an issue, let's put it that way. So the other phenomenon here is when you have a hurricane is often able to, in essence, create its own weather. So in this case, what we're looking at is Tesla is able to enter China, and all of a sudden, the auto market is bending towards Tesla. And what do I mean by bending towards Tesla? There are a number of entities that would have been able to sell cars had Tesla not been there. But now that we're on the verge of Tesla entering the marketplace, and their cars are this well regarded, and their competitors are not well established, we actually think that Tesla is going to enter and quickly accelerate into 80 to 90% market share, minimum 50, but we think high 70s or so is about right, with kind of the only company in China able to fully defend itself is BYD, because they're sort of avoiding Tesla because they're doing trucks and buses as well as cars. And in the car sector, other manufacturers, because while they have beautiful vehicles, etc., there's a number of issues that threaten their valuability, as we've reviewed. Charging network absence, other than primarily the city or cities that they were originated in. They don't have 300-mile plus range typically. We've seen a lot of recall issues and repair issues related to these vehicles as well. The footprint Tesla enjoys also affects that. And then there's a final sort of note that we think is kind of interesting. Based on our analysis, and there's a concept called marginal utility when it comes to economics. And it was our estimate that sales of Tesla would be strongest actually in Europe, and the primary reason being the fuel price difference. In Europe, average price of fuel is $8.50 a gallon, and United States, let's say it's $3. China is actually 3.50 or $4. So the theory that we had going was because of how much money people were saving on fuel in Europe, we would have a real strong push towards buyers picking up Teslas for that reason to reduce the cost of fuel. The reality turns out to be, yes, that fuel advantage is there, but for new vehicles, particularly high price vehicles, taxes, et cetera, could double the price of the vehicle. So in essence, hitting at lower price points is even more important in Europe because of how severe the taxes are and how that impacts prices. So if we bring that to China to look at, hey, how sales are going to line up and what the marginal utility is, yes, the fuel factor is not a huge one for China, but there are a couple other factors that are affecting sales. Number one is that according to one of our recent folks that we met who flew in from Beijing, he indicated that if you have an electric vehicle, you can drive any day a week and there are no issues. If you have an ICE vehicle, you have limited days based on the numbers on your license plate when you're not allowed to actually drive. The second issue that pops up is that delays. What was indicated is that if you want the right to buy and drive an ICE vehicle, we were told that it can take as long as 5 years to get that permission. And so if you do an EV, you don't have the delay. So in essence, China is creating the weather in terms of electric vehicles and creating the reason for why consumers might shift to this option. Plus, up until the end of 2020, they're also offering fairly heavy financial incentives in form of rebates that further lower the prices of a car, and Tesla enjoys this rebate as well. So, the bottom line is that uh, these set of sort of Chinese inputs are adding up to a great reason why consumers should consider as well as go with a Tesla vehicle, electric in general, but Tesla in specific because it's the best in that space. And then there's a number that keeps burning in my brain because I keep hearing it from different experts, which is uh, there's a fascinating element that keeps happening, which is there are a number of experts in the auto industry that indicate that the average person only drives 50 miles a day. So therefore, the vehicles that have lower range should not be a big deal as long as they're able to reach consumer range of 50 miles. The consumer should be happy spending the money on sort of lesser priced vehicles. And we've found that not to be the case. The consumers are saying, we want range. And I've been studying folks with the lower range vehicles that they've purchased, and they haven't been happy with the outcomes because they have huge limitations of where they can go. And without a supercharger network, they can't choose to modify their range quickly if they choose to go outside of that. So this means that even the 220-mile range Teslas are actually getting good sales, even though because they're the lowest price. And the issue that pops up is that, well, wait a second, there's a fascinating circumstance happening here where Tesla's like a hurricane or a force that moves into the space and is dominating sales with a number of advantages that it represents. So our goal today was really to identify the fact that, Tesla to some extent creates its own weather, and it's somewhat of a hurricane where its outer bands are now starting to lash competitors because not only are people or people starting to think Tesla will soon be here, sales of EVs can actually decline for a period because you kind of sucking the oxygen out of the room until Tesla arrives in full force on the beach. And now you have those large sales starting to pick up after the Tesla arrives, much like a hurricane might. One of the other things we're watching for that we haven't figured out, but we think it's an interesting question is, the Chinese government officials indicated that they were looking forward to the competitive environment, really forcing the domestic suppliers to improve greatly. what happens if those domestic suppliers start going out of business in large numbers because nobody will buy their cars as Tesla enters the marketplace in numbers? It's possible they could say, we changed our mind, we don't want to help Tesla, let's pull back some of the incentives as a way to reduce consumer adoption. We kind of don't know what's happening there. And we've sort of been expecting a China government response because after you spend $50 billion to uh, to you know after you spend $50 billion to help 50 EV companies to get going, and then they all start going out of business, do you all of a sudden turn around and say, well, whoops, we made a mistake. We need to rethink the support of Tesla we've provided, and how do we sort of shift the levers around to sort of put some of these companies back into business? So the counter argument to this is the fact that look at the number of jobs Tesla will now be generating, and um, you know the the issue that pops up is the jobs that would have been had in the EV industry, um, by one firm is now shifting over to jobs had with Tesla's plant being built. So we think that the long-term thinking of China was we get the jobs one way or the other, and the vehicles are being sold in country, and then we get the benefits on pollution, et cetera, by the electric vehicles entering in larger numbers confidently by consumers. So you know, it's an interesting circumstance that's emerging, and all of these questions are going to be answered sort of over the next 6 months, year, et cetera. The way we think it's going to actually break out is that Apple has 400,000 employees in Shenzhen that build their phones, and we think that this is starting to emerge as a situation where Tesla takes huge market share, and then if China doesn't flinch, that market share is established and maintained with Tesla introducing extra products that add to the advantages that the company enjoys. So, we're optimistic about what's happening, with the only fly in the ointment being, what if China sort of flinches on the fact that they have all these companies that go under because folks are unwilling to buy non-Tesla vehicles. And so we think it's a fascinating situation that's emerging. And we really wanted to emphasize the point that there are certain companies, when they enter the space, they enter with such force and power that it's like a hurricane where they end up sort of destroying everything else, and their power is really being felt. And this is sort of our forecast and estimation of what's going to happen with Tesla. Um, so, we think this is an interesting angle on how things are working. Um, you know, I wanted to sort of end formal comments here, and there's a raging discussion right now about the fact that Tesla really doesn't want human workers. It's focused on, can we build the whole thing using robots? And I'd have to agree that um, Tesla slash Elon has a real interest in how can we use technology to get the job done, which facilitates possibilities of production that you don't get with human beings. Um, you know, Elon Musk has had to walk back his plan to go complete robotics if possible. And our assessment of things is that, I think this might um, be the case here as well. In particular, we have an eye towards how and why it is that Toyota enjoys such high quality vehicles and they only have 25% automation. So we're hopeful that, yes, Tesla does well with all the automation it's chosen to do, um, but we're also hopeful that, if in fact it doesn't go well, we're able to switch over to human beings and allow those human beings to demonstrate why it is they still add value, et cetera. Um, so enjoyed the input that all of you had relative to our topic for today. We're 2 days away from earnings and looking forward to see how this hits. I would say what's most interesting to us is, well, there's one other data point that pops up when it comes to Tesla right now, which I don't know if all of you have seen, but on all of the Tesla cars currently, particularly different versions of the three, there's been an extension of time to deliveries. So we're I believe at 6 to 8 weeks delivery time for the Performance Edition, and then the time is actually doubled um, when it comes to the lowest priced Teslas. So we're actually looking forward to a pop in the stock because when you have these delays in deliveries, it's a sign that demand is so strong that you're having difficulty keeping up with production, and that's a great problem to have. Um, hmm, interesting. Uh, some great comments here. I think what I'm going to end up doing is sort of clipping your comments and putting them under the show so others can weigh in on the topics relative to employees or no and healthcare costs and other costs, and whether automation is sort of the best route to go. Sort of an interesting, raging dialogue here, and I've shared my thoughts on this for a long time. I think automation is good, but at the end of the day, you have to keep your car on the road. So if it affects your ability to get good quality, I think it's a bad deal to over automate. So yeah, I kind of agree with you, Mickey Rodriguez. Good points. So we're ending our formal comments now, and one of our viewers pointed out that we typically say we're going to not say hello. We do say hello at the end of the show, not at the beginning. So first, thanks, Jerry, Mickey, Jerry. I see several of you that are live with us, and we appreciate your joining us. Um, for our health discussion today, I wanted to note that I actually met with a kidney doctor, and we were having a conversation about fried foods. And what he suggested was that you don't want to have fried foods more than once a week. And the reason is that what happens with your body is that it looks at the fried foods and says, oh, we don't know what this is. Why don't we take this fried food and store it into your organs? And so type 2 diabetes can result from stuff like this. So we wanted to note this to you because, in a healthy eating process, fried foods is one of the elements that actually could be bad for your health, and it's highly recommended to note that to you, uh, you know, etc. Um, wow. uh, in line with this is, and it's affected my eating recently, is my meeting with a cardiothoracic surgeon where she indicated that there are 2 times you should have bacon annually, your birthday and Christmas. And so I've really been working to move into that mind frame because it sort of shares, you know, the type of issues that these things can generate. And so that's our health tip for today. Uh, Wanted to thank all of you for taking time out to join us today on rainy Sunday on the East Coast. Actually look forward to what your thoughts are uh, on the show at the end. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we greatly support your Patreon. Greatly appreciate your Patreon support if you would. And look out for the Tesla hurricane as it hits China. It'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Um, in German, we say Tschüss, mach's gut. French, au revoir. Hebrew, lehitraot. Um, Farsi, Choda Hafez. Hedge du, from our brother Donovan in Swedish. Um, interesting. You know, I'm supposed to end right here, but I did want to make a comment about the pickup truck that I found interesting, which is I feel like it's one of the dumbest products out there, even though we're going to have to do a show about it. And the reason is that if you take off the back end of a Model X, you now have a pickup truck. All you have to do is reinforce the walls, to make up for the enforcement of the ceiling that's not there. So there's a lot of, arguments about Rivian being a great vehicle, and it is, but pretty much you can take an X and retrofit it, and you have a pickup truck. Um, in terms of look anyway, yes, it's going to have all that weight where you have to reinforce in the side wallets, etc. But, something to think about as we move into the introduction of the pickup truck. At any rate, once again, thanks you for joining us. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Have a great day. Bye for now. In Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk good man. And thank you once again for all of your comments, and we look forward to more of them in our after show in the comments below.